Hey y'all, Wiggle here. Looks like my insulation is doing a pretty good job. That solar panel that I had just installed for my deep freeze is under snow. I'm not going up on the roof. But I'll tell you what I have done. I have just hooked up a battery charger to the battery bank, and it is keeping up with the fridge. So the DC fridge is working, which is good. What had happened is I didn't have a solar charge controller. I hooked it all up, my whole system, and then my batteries never got charged. I pushed one battery bank up, ran the fridge till it was too low to run the fridge, hooked up a second battery bank, ran that one down, finally got my charge controller, hooked it up, got it working, and then we never had sun. We had a cloudy day every day, and then it snowed. The point being is that my poor little system, the batteries never got an honest start. They never had a chance. So I hooked up a battery charger up in the attic, and now I'm running my DC off of AC, but just a regular old cheap battery charger. It's 24 volt bank at 202 amp hours. Yes. No, it's 12 volt. I'm sorry, it's 12 volt battery bank at 404. And that's running it. I put the charger on it. It has charged up enough to keep the fridge on all the time, and we've had no sun. No charge whatsoever to the batteries at all. Definitely run down. We did not lose water last night, so this upgrade, if you want to call it that, did not fail me. However, not in 2 nights we're going to have 8 degrees, they're saying. That is way colder than normal for us. We get there obviously, but it's usually just a few nights out of the year we get that cold. So I've got to put my last piece of insulation on this side, and the wires are going to be a little bit of a pain. And then I've got to close this gap in so no water gets in there. And these are just hanging there. I just ran out of light yesterday. So I'm going to finish this off. I don't have a screw gun with me to open this up, but it worked. Now what I thought that had occurred to me, if that heat tape can't keep up, I've got a 100 watt personal heater. It's AC, regular, 120 volt, plug in the wall, 120 volt AC, 100 watts, so it's pretty tiny. I think I might just go ahead and unplug the heater strip and just run that thing. When it gets like down to 20, I'll trust that heater strip. When it gets down below 20, I'm gonna just go ahead and plug in that little heater until I get my bulbs here. And then I'll have to monitor the temperature and make sure the bulbs can do it, because I want to be off grid. But right now I'm counting on AC to keep myself from not freezing out here, and I'm counting on AC to keep my DC fridge running. So I'm glad I'm on grid. It's more convenient. I am working my way off grid as I figure this out. So it is what it is. So I'm going to take you over. It's still kind of chilly. I'm going to wait till this afternoon to tackle this. I'm going to show you what I'm going to work on this morning. Alright, so I'm in here. A little bit breezy, a little bit chilly. I'm definitely going to close this in. I have my flooded acid, lead acid, flooded, sealed battery bank in there, trying to keep it from freezing. Now on the other side of this wall is a chicken coop. It's kind of closed in, but not completely. So the temperature will creep in here through this wall. I'm thinking of just putting some plastic or maybe Tyvek on this wall just temporarily, just to cut on the breeze. And I guess I could possibly just put some insulation sheets up against the wall. Yeah, maybe I could just do that. Not really cut them, just kind of stand them where they need to be. Maybe put a couple screws in them or something to hold it. Maybe I'll just put the foam up since it's just sitting around anyway. I bought foam for the back of my greenhouse extension that I never built. The greenhouse extension was supposed to house this deep freeze, and now it's in here for now. This is off-grid bathroom, but I don't need it right now. At any rate, I'm going to get the pink foam up all the way around this outside wall. That's behind this. The shower is actually an inside wall, which is why it's not insulated. So maybe I'll insulate the inside wall with the pink, just to, instead of trying to get behind this. The reason that I didn't insulate this is there's a wood stove on the other side, and that heat from the wood stove is going to come through these vents. So I didn't want to insulate this wall. I wanted the heat to come freely through the wall into the shower area. Keep the back of the shower warm. But that's not helping me right now. So this temporary insulation will. You can see that breeze blowing through. So I'm definitely going to close up that top and try to just warm it up in here just for the sake of the batteries. Plus I need to go that way this needs to be insulated anyway, so it's an investment into the future. It's not critical as far as the construction, but it is critical as far as the batteries. And I want to bring some other batteries in here, like make this my charging. I do have AC power, so all these old batteries that I'm trying to figure out if they're even worth trying to save, I can bring them in here and work on my batteries in the meantime. So I'm going to start insulating this, and I'll just show you some pictures as I go. That's my main thing, this and then that tank. But it got down in the lower 20s and we did not freeze, so thankfully we have addressed it. I don't know if it gets down close to the single digits. I don't know. I'm not going to risk it, so I'm going to put that other little heater in there. So anyway, I'll talk to you more later. So this is an update on the Save the Tomatoes initiative. I'm out in the greenhouse. We are at about 45 air temperature. I need to water today. I haven't watered these onions in a bit. So it's only going to be 30 tonight. And since, well, I'm going to wait for it to warm up a little more. And then I'll unmask our little tomatoes. I'm not convinced that it's air temperature, solely air temperature, that kills tomatoes. I think it's ground temperature. So this is not bad at all. Probably in the, at least the surface here is probably in the 50s. Maybe I'll leave these covered. I don't want my little babies getting cold. So this is the main vine here. So all of the trailing part of the vine is in these buckets. So if I lose the trailing part, I'm thinking I might not lose these tomatoes up here, because they are sure trying to grow. Maybe not that one. That's a dead end there. But this was not here. This is all sucker growth, which is very nice. So even if I lose the further back parts of the vine, I'll keep the main vine. And I think I'm going to wrap some heating pads around this, and just to make sure to preserve this part. If I lose the tips, I can live with that. I don't want to. Try not to. This is only going to be 30 tonight. When we get our temperature up above, mid 50s or 60s, hopefully, even with no sun today. And we have an insulating layer of snow up there. When we get the temperature up, I'm going to peel these off, and it's going to only be 30 degrees outside, so it's not going to be below freezing in here tonight. There's no way. So, oh, there's an extra blanket we could have been using. Oh, my boys. We should have double blanketed all that. But if we got into the 20s and it didn't kill my tomatoes, we'll probably make it through the winter. You can see this other stuff is dead. If I get time, I will pull this stuff out. I need to get some more food going. I just haven't. So anyway, this was just a Save the Tomatoes initiative. When I have really cold nights, I just go ahead and leave the blankets on. When it's going to be in the 30s, I will take the blankets off, so it hopefully has a chance to warm up. So I just kind of look at the expected temperature. So I haven't uncovered these. These have been covered for 2 days, just because we did not get the temperatures yesterday, even though it was sunny. Anyway, if I work on this, I will update you on the greenhouse. So I'm cutting my insulation and my measurement on my width. Now I tried to keep my 24 perfect, but we'll see how I did with that. That way I can just snap the insulation and have to put it right in. Now I want you to see that my bottom is 59.5 and my top is almost 60. But I have to cut it at 59.5 because the thickness of it, when you snap it and there's rugged parts of it, if you cut it too precise, you never want to get it in there. You have to leave like a 1/4 inch because you're not sure where your unsquareness is or anything like that. So my up and down is probably going to be good. I'm going to have little gaps at the end. You can try to cut it perfectly. It is challenging. So I'm just going to cut it to my smallest dimension and then put it in there. And then I'll just foam it back in later. And again, if you want to try to draw them and get the crooked cuts, but then you have to cut every edge because it doesn't work. It's just, I find it's more efficient just to foam it back in. You might use like 1 can to do this whole room, so it's kind of worth it. Just put on some nitrile gloves and use spray foam. Anyway, one of the tricks of cutting sheet goods that will cut with the razor is you mark your measurement with your knife. Now you're going to take your, I don't know if I can get this or not. Maybe I can. You just hold your edge of your tape, and then you take your hand to the other side and just kind of hold your fingers against the edge. Then you just pick up your blade and just cut. Now I'll show you this other side. This is how I'm holding my fingers. And then just sliding it like that. And that's my only mark. So I don't know if that helps you, but that's how I cut it. Let me finish this cut and then I'll snap it. So there's my piece in. Pretty tight. Kind of had to bow it just slightly to get it in. So I cut the members on my sawmill to be the width of this. That way when I'm going to just cut thin pieces of oak or whatever, hardwood of whatever kind I can get. And I'm going to make that my paneling inside, just like barn board. And you can see this was all tight when I hung it, and it shrank that much. It's only been a few months. But I left only 2 screws in each section so I can just loosen the screws and just scoot it all over. Part of the plan. I'm losing my battery. And I'm just going to put a piece of insulation in there. That's going to get glazing later for light purposes. But for now I'm just going to close it with pink. So this cut ranges from 59 to 59.5, so I just cut it 59. I don't think I got my last thing on there. So flip it over. I'm going to cut right here. Just hit it. Bam. There's your fairly nice cut. And I am putting my scrap pieces down here. I got that little conduit to cut around, so I'd rather just use a little piece to, it's less likely to mess it up, and I'll just put a piece of tape over that. And yeah, when I'm putting my factory edges, when I have a cut, putting the factory edge towards the middle, that way it's a nice perfect seam. My cuts are not as good as the factory, obviously. Now, sometimes your sheet, when you get it cut, because everything's not perfectly square, sometimes it's going to be trickier to get it in one way. Flip it every direction to see if you can get it in before you start trimming it. Now I'm dragging on this top, mostly because my board is not straight. It's curved a little. So you can see where I'm dragging here. I'm just going to trim the edge just a little, just to get it started in there. Hopefully I'll be able to crush it in there, because I like a nice tight fit. So it's worth taking your time to get these in here with as few little drafts as possible. So I'm going to work on this to see if I can get it without major... There's my 59 down there. You can see it's dragging. 59.5 up here. You see my gap. And I do have this edge mostly in here. It's just the top that's giving me a hassle. And probably the bottom. But I got to get the top in first and I'll work on the bottom. So this is a bit of a mess here. You can see I got it started. And then in the middle, either my board is warped, my cut is bad. Well, that's where I snapped it on the factory seam. At any rate, I'm not going to use a razor blade on that. I'll show you the other tool. Got to go get it. So I have 3 different tools for the job. This is probably the cheapest, and I like having the handle. You have to hold it this way and jab with it, or you can hold it more like a saw. It's more comfortable. This is easier to fit in your tool pouch, but you can't. Once you dull it, you got to throw it away. I mean, you could probably sharpen it, but basically that will fit right in the tool pouch, which is nice. This will also fit in the tool pouch, but you can change out your blades. So if you have a reciprocating saw, you can change it to different blades. You can use a hacksaw blade or a really rough blade, whatever you're needing. So if you have a reciprocating saw, you probably just want to get a handle. Then you have plenty of blades. But none of these are that expensive. I'm going to probably go with probably this one. I don't like this because it gets loose. So this is actually more of a firm tool. You don't have to hassle with that screw. So I usually don't use, if I have the same blade, I'll usually choose this if it's close. So I'm just going to run that blade along the bottom of the board, and I'm just going to cut that back edge and try to get the front edge in. We'll just see how it goes. Now you can use a power reciprocating saw too. I just prefer to use the hand saw. Be sure to keep your blade parallel with the top of the board. Don't angle it, keep it straight. Also, I have Tyvek back there, so I would rather have the control of a hand tool than a power tool. I don't want to be poking holes in my Tyvek. So I'm taking that. So, and this stuff's expensive, so the hand tools just give you more control, and it's not that hard. So I suggest using hand tools on this, so you don't mess them up in a hurry. There's just not a lot there for a power saw to work against. It'll just chew it up. Sometimes they'll even snap it. Anyway. So I tapped it halfway in, and I'll just keep working it, and if it starts dragging, you'll snap these edges. So you're better off, it'll actually be cleaner if you just go ahead and saw your tight spots. It'll be a little bit jagged, but if you try to force it in there, you're going to snap it, like I did up here. Being impatient. So there it is. Yes, it's a little bit jagged, but you don't really see any light coming out. And you can clean those edges up a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. It's just going to be behind the wall board anyway. I'm going to cut my little scrap there. I got to work around that conduit, so I'll just cut a little U shape, then I'll just foam it back. That's just what I'm at. All right, as I'm working on this insulation, I realized it might be easier not to cut it, just to mark it. So just run your tape down and mark it, then go back and cut it, rather than trying to drag your knife. Probably end with frustration, unless you practiced it for a while. So, and again, make sure you leave a little less than you need, or you're gonna have a hard time getting it in there. Depending on how sharp your blade is, multiple passes, and make sure you're cutting, not ripping. Like that. I just ripped it. Then flip, snap. So I just held this down there and marked it with my knife where the edge of the conduit was, and then the top, and I rounded the cut a little bit, and I saved my piece. I could just snap that off and just kind of wedge that piece back in there. Take a little off the top. Let's see how it goes. So it went right on in there. Easiest piece yet. This is a small piece. Then I just cut a little off the top of this. And I just push it right back in there. So, ready-made plug. So the wall continues. I can do a little shuffling around now.